Hi, I'm Torsten, and this is Literature and Pictures. Today, I'm back with the third episode of my Cosmic Saga review. Today, I want to talk about Annihilation Conquest, the direct sequel to Annihilation that I reviewed a week ago. It's over there. But today, I want to dive into Annihilation Conquest, open this book up, review this edition, and review the story with all of you together. Again, I'm going into this blind. This is episode 3 of 6 of the Cosmic Saga series that I'm currently reading through for the first time. I was luckily able to avoid spoilers prior to heading into the Cosmic Saga. And so far that's paid off. I really enjoyed Annihilation. And I hope I'm gonna do the same with the sequel. So yeah, Annihilation Conquest was teased in the last page of Annihilation. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the characters' journeys continue here. But yeah, I'll open this one up and then we'll head over to the other desk to review. Annihilation Classic. Annihilation Conquest. Road to War of Kings. War of Kings. Realm of Kings. The Aftermath. All right, it's time to review Annihilation Conquest, the Omnibus. Again, last warning, spoilers ahead. So I'm going to review this book. This is the direct market cover here with this dude on the cover. He has a pretty cool miniseries in the book. His adapted name is Wraith. And he started off with no name, but we'll get to that when we get there. But first of all, so I want to show you the dust jacket and what's underneath. We have this beautiful dust jacket with Wraith on the cover, the Guardians of the Galaxy on the back. And then underneath the book is having a very nice spine with the Guardians here. Same image on the back and this guy on the front. Again, spoilers, or you might have recognized him already. Kind of sad to go into this avoiding any spoilers, and then you get Ultron on the front, kind of giving away some of the twists here, one of the big twists, or revelations, I should say, of the book. But nonetheless, let's dive in. So this is Annihilation Conquest, the Omnibus that was printed in 2020. So that's the second printing, first edition of the second printing that came out in 2020, printed by the iMac printer in Turkey. And no, it didn't have any weird smell or anything like that. So maybe back in 2020, they used different fragrances. But jokes aside, this is the story about Ultron taking over the Phalanx and then occupying the Kree Empire. I want to dive in, go through what's collected in here, review the story, give my commentary on it, and go from there. But yeah, we have what you can see in the materials here. You have Nova. So we have the Nova series collected. All of those stories came out between like 2007, 2008. But Nova 1 through 12 and the first annual, we have the Annihilation Conquest Prologue 1, and then the mini-series Annihilation Conquest, Star-Lord, Quasar, and Wraith. And then Nova Annual, well, I mentioned that already. But then we get into the actual main event, the 6-issue Annihilation Conquest mini-series or event book. And then followed up with some material for the entire Annihilation Saga summary, and then some material of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. But the way this is mapped, I think the mapping works out great, or in the best way that it could work out. There's one thing I have to criticize though, and it goes back to the spoiler of Ultron being involved in this, is that before the big reveal, and we get to that later on, big reveal that Ultron is controlling the Phalanx, we actually have Gamora and Drax talking about Ultron. In one of the, I think it's one of the Nova 8 through 10, one of those, I believe it is, talking about Ultron and kind of hinting at what's behind the Phalanx taking over, because in the beginning we don't know anything other than the Phalanx taking over, and we can get into that now actually. So let's start with Nova 1. So here we learn that Richard Rider still has the World Mind unified within himself. Nova visits Earth just to find them scrambling over Earth issues with no sense for the bigger picture. We have Richard meeting with Iron Man, Tony Stark, and they ask him to register because we're in the midst of Secret Wars. And so he's being asked to register because he's yet to register. He's being attacked by those guys, the New Warriors. And all of that is very foreign to Richard. So even though he's from Earth, he's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to deal with your little issues. We have a galaxy to defend. We have those bad boys coming in. We have something attacking Kree space. And after just defeating Annihilus and the Annihilation Wave, there's a new threat. And apparently no one, And apparently no one on Earth has heard about Annihilus's conquest attempt from the Annihilation Omnibus. So we are facing an ignorant and oblivious Earth. The heroes of Earth are busy with their own quarrels. And so Nova is like, nope, I'm not going to deal with that. See you later. There's a nice moment here with Robbie, as they were former team members, but he's like, nope, I'm out. Goodbye. Back into space. He says bye to his parents, and he's off. We're getting into Annihilation Conquest Prologue. Here we learn that there is a new Quasar, which is Phyla Vel. So Phyla Vel is the new Quasar. She's being introduced here with Moondragon as her partner. And we're given the backdrop on them. Of course, we know them from the Annihilation Wave, from the Annihilation event. And now they have kind of adopted their new personas here. Or at least Quasar has. We meet Peter Quill, who still refuses to go by Star-Lord throughout the entire book. So up until the end, he's like, no, don't call me Star-Lord, call me Peter. We're basically switching between those story arcs. So Quasar and Moondragon and Peter Quill, who accidentally, involuntarily unleashes or opens the door for the Phalanx to infiltrate the Kree army, and all of Kree, really, because it's not very long after that the Phalanx start building their tower and isolating the Kree Empire from the rest of the universe. And so yeah, the Phalanx start conquering the Kree space using the transmode virus. Richard Rider tries to escape and nearly dies, but the world mind transfers itself into Kor-El. And so yes, we have the Phalanx who start conquering the Kree Empire and isolating themselves. Richard trying to escape and nearly dies trying to do so. Gamora has been taken by the Phalanx, and we learn that the strongest heroes or the strongest warriors that the Phalanx convert are being picked as selects. So Gamora is one of the elite warriors. We have others that have been turned, but especially her, she's going after Nova. So Richard tries to escape and nearly dies. We have the World Mind escaping from Richard as he is dying, and then the World Mind transfers itself into Kor-El, the new Nova 1. A Kree medic, while Ryder is healing, she's becoming the new Nova, the host of the World Mind. She's a pretty cool character though, I gotta say. I would have loved to see more of her. But as the plot has it, she won't last long. She dies like an issue or 2 issues later, because it's Gamora and Drax who are following Nova, capturing him, or as he has died, kind of reviving him and converting him. So he's infected now. Richard is with the virus. And so it's Nova, or Richard Rider, Gamora, and Drax going after the new Nova, Kor-El. And Kor-El doesn't stand a chance. She dies being stabbed in the back by Gamora. So this is something that Richard will carry on throughout this book, even after he gets rid of the virus or gets into remission. Something that he psychologically deals with throughout the rest of this book. But yeah, I would have loved to see her character develop a little bit more. It would have been cool for her to be his first apprentice to rebuild the Nova Corps. But no, she's done. But then Richard's infection with the virus doesn't last too long. He starts being self-aware. You see how all the selects, all the infected are having those techno eyes. Yeah, and then a page later, you already see it, a little bit of the awakening. His eyes returning back to normal while Gamora's are still infected. And it's the World Mind who's pushing back on the virus. So a few pages later, he actually pushes back the virus and starts fighting off Gamora. Going through some pages here because the art is pretty cool. And then we head into the Star-Lord miniseries. So this is a 4-issue miniseries about Star-Lord. And actually, I did not notice going in, but this is where the Guardians of the Galaxy as we know them today, or from the MCU, similar to that, but as they would last and go on, basically comic saga by DNA, by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, would become. So this is the creation of the new Guardians of the Galaxy, because the Guardians of the Galaxy have existed before, but this is a new team formed by Star-Lord, or by Peter Quill, I should say, as he wants to be called now. So this team is being put together by the Kree. He is assigned Bug, a Shi'ar warrior called Deathcry. She wouldn't last long though. We have Mantis. We have Gabe, aka Captain Universe, Rocket Raccoon, and of course, Groot. So here you have the core members of the Guardians of the Galaxy as we know them from the MCU or more modern comics formed back in 2007 in this miniseries. And that's the team. Star-Lord is not in here, but we have Peter Quill down here, the Bug, Mantis, Captain Universe, Deathcry, Groot, and Rocket Raccoon. Groot obviously would go through different iterations. Every time he dies, he grows back into itself on a branch, on a little piece, but that's basically the team. Again, Deathcry wouldn't last long. I think a few issues in this miniseries already. She is being killed, causing conflict because other team members are taking her kills or helping her in battle. So she's not a team player. Every time Gabe is saving her by helping her out, she is upset at him, wants to kill him, because to her it's an offense that he helped her. And after the second time she's trying to do that, she's finished off. But yeah, within those pages we witness the creation of the Guardians of the Galaxy with the team members that are probably familiar to most. Here we have Groot in a smaller form. So here is where she, for the second time, attacks Gabe. He defends himself and boom! Deathcry splatters all over the place. He didn't intend to do that. He's like, what the hell? What did I do? And Rocket Raccoon is like, well, saved your lives, what you did. She went feral. So yeah, and instead of letting her attack him, he just obliterated her, which is a risk that every team member took when they went in. They were told, they're like, well, basically similar to a Suicide Squad. And I don't know if that was meant to be a reference to DC or not, but pretty interesting miniseries. I had no idea that this basically covers the creation of the Guardians of the Galaxy, the team that we know. And so throughout those pages, this basically establishes the Guardians of the Galaxy that we know today, and the team members that are left after this miniseries. So we're down to 6. Then the Quasar miniseries, also 4 issues, all miniseries here with the 4 issues, Star-Lord, Quasar, and Wraith. But in the Quasar mini, we have a different writer, and you can feel it immediately. I didn't know first going in that this was written by someone else, but the dialogue was horrible, so I had to go back and look up who wrote those issues. It was pretty bad. The dialogue was horrible. You could tell this was written by some other writer, not by Dan Abnett or Andy Lanning, who did most of the other work. There are too many unnecessary adjectives in the dialogue, too much over-explaining to the reader. But we have some significant changes here. We have Heather, Moondragon, who becomes an actual Moondragon. Here she's retelling her origin, but we have Quasar, who's using her quantum bands that are wearing off energy because, again, the phalanx have isolated Kree space. They're within that Kree space, and so the quantum bands cannot recharge. And so she has to be careful with regards to how she uses her energy. But in this moment, when Heather is attacked, she transforms into an actual dragon. So Moondragon becomes a Moondragon. And instead of breaking up, the two decide to stay together because they're in love. And now they write together. So Quasar and Moondragon. Her personality, Heather's, hasn't changed. So she is still her. She has the same thoughts. It's just a different form, but technically the same character. And obviously that form and shape helps defeating the enemies. They are on a quest to find a savior. So Quasar has those voices in her head that guide her towards a savior that can help them. And when they get there, they find out that that savior is none other than Adam Warlock. And the voice in her head was none other than the Supreme Intelligence guiding her to Adam. I didn't have a problem with the Supreme Intelligence still being alive at this point. What I had a problem with is that the Supreme Intelligence here is guiding Phylar, so is guiding Quasar to Adam, having more control over its own thoughts and actions. We see how it is shaped here. While in the next miniseries, Wraith miniseries, that's the Supreme Intelligence right here. And in this miniseries, we find out that Ronan finds the Phalanx holding the Supreme Intelligence. And so that doesn't make too much sense, right? Because either the Phalanx are holding the Supreme Intelligence hostage, or the Supreme Intelligence is guiding Quasar to find Adam Warlock. It's a little bit contradictory. One out of two big criticisms, or maybe three, that I have about this book or this event as a whole. Either way, it's a plot device that gets us Adam Warlock back, which concludes the Quasar miniseries. Then we're heading into the Wraith miniseries, and we don't know who Wraith is. He's this badass dude who has no name to begin with. He's given a name later. He likes the name Wraith when someone calls him that. But he's the ultimate weapon. He terrifies the crap out of the Phalanx and is able to resist the virus, is able to push them back. And overall, like, he's super underutilized. Like, he plays a role in the end, but like, with as much power as he has, they could have used him better and more. Maybe that would have ended the book more quickly. But yeah, this is something that I would have probably used differently, but then I'm not the writer. It's a shame that he doesn't play a bigger role later on, because this is by far the best miniseries, the best story arc within the entire omnibus. So we're introduced to Wraith. The art is awesome. So you have this not overly stylistic, but great comic art that introduces us to this new character. And we learn about Wraith. This is also written pretty well. So this is also not written by DNA, but by Javier Grillo Marxuac. I think I'm butchering this name. But what Javier here is able to do is introduce this character, make us root for him, follow him along as he is decimating the Phalanx and getting out of their grip. Paired with great art, again, best miniseries of this omnibus. He is looking for the murderer of his parents. Get the backstory here, but something that isn't fully wrapped up by the end is he doesn't find the murderer of his parents. Maybe that's something for later. But yeah, within the pages of this omnibus, he doesn't get to close his arc. He doesn't find the murderer of his parents, doesn't get to take revenge. It's not really addressed afterwards, other than in a side sentence like, oh yeah, you're still with us because you want to take revenge on the murderer of your parents. We'll help you find them, but you got to help us first. But again, that never happens. He doesn't get to know who that was. But something else is happening within the pages of this mini series here. We get Super Skrull back. So one of the big players from the Annihilation Omnibus, the first one, is Super Skrull and Praxagora, who are being freed here and kind of teaming up with Wraith. Ronan, still under the control of the Phalanx, he would later on come around and get rid of the virus with Wraith's help. At this point, they're fighting against each other, but later on would reunite. And then, yep, we get to the point where they find the Supreme Intelligence being held hostage and being infected by the virus, by the Phalanx. So kind of different state of mind as to what we saw it being earlier. That's a pretty cool image here. Wraith joining Super Skrull and Paxagora, while Ronan gives in to the Phalanx and basically tells the Phalanx that he will fight by their side. So again, we don't get the conclusion of this until the next issue, where Wraith is using his Exolon that installs fear in the Phalanx, paired with the Supreme Intelligence, who is embodied in Wraith now. So he carries the Supreme Intelligence and the Exolon, uses that combination to defeat the Phalanx and to free Ronan from Phalanx control, which happens here. And Ronan is not very happy because he realizes what he's done. Even though it wasn't his control, the Phalanx had infected him, but he feels he betrayed the Kree. And so he asks Wraith to kill him. He does not do that. He says, "You're worth more to your people being alive, and get over it. We all have a bad history. We all have made bad decisions, and yours aren't even your fault." So this is Wraith in a nutshell, but pretty cool miniseries. And we head back to the Nova ongoing series that will continue beyond this omnibus. More about that later on. But those issues are always put in between. So we have the first few issues of Nova in the beginning. We have between Nova 7 and Nova 8. So 7, we have the 3 and then 8 here. The 3 miniseries, Starlord, Quasar, and Wraith. This much, and then you're still supposed to remember what you actually read in 7. So you can go back, see where he actually is, and then continue with the Nova miniseries, in which we are introduced to Nowhere. So this is also the first appearance of Nowhere. We are given an introduction of what Nowhere is at the edge of the known universe, or at the edge of the universe that we're in. We are in a head of a decapitated Celestial. That by itself is pretty cool. And then again, first appearance of Nowhere. That is a 2-issue story arc that is covered here in Nova 8 and 9. We have Nowhere Part 2, where they defeat a local threat in this space, in this realm. But what we get out with is basically, well, Richard depleting his powers and trying to push the virus back. We got Cosmo, who's a Russian dog, able to speak to him, helping him out. And then Richard escaping, being helped by Cosmo and the inhabitants of Nowhere. And those two folks are not far behind. So Gamora and Drax are right on Nova's tail and following him. Boom, we head into Nova 10 and we skip some time because there they are back together. They don't know how they ended up there. They wake up fighting in between spaces. So where they are here is basically a filler issue. They're just in between spaces where they want to go from A to B. But in between the universe, being attacked, fighting together, and you kind of get a foreshadowing moment here of Nova teaming up with Gamora, later on with Drax as well. Pretty cool issue, but overall not really that impactful for the overall arc, with pretty cool art in here. And I love them together in this, Gamora and Richard. Again, later on, Gamora would come around, get rid of the virus. Or Richard helps her get rid of the virus. Richard's friends help them get rid of the virus. Drax and Gamora will be cured later on. More about that in a bit. But yeah, that's where we head into the annual. The annual is interesting because it kind of throws you back to the beginning. It's a retelling of Richard's origin. we can compare this here real quick with his actual origin that we talked about 2 weeks ago in the pages of the Annihilation Classic oversized hardcover. So if we're opening this one up, going to the section, going to the Nova issue, we get an updated cover, first of all. And we get a modernization of the origin. So this is not a retcon. We'll later find out this is all like a fever dream, or the Phalanx trying to convince Richard that there's no hope for him. The events are written, so he sees his past, his present, and his future, and it's suggested to him by the Phalanx through this fever dream that he should just give up because history is already written. This war will never end. He will lose, yada, yada, yada. But we don't notice at the beginning. So regardless, it's a pretty cool retelling. That's why the dialogue is a little bit different. I mean, not much. You still have some things that are taken one by one. Here he says, oh no. And in the modern version, he says blue blazers, which obviously is his catchphrase. But for the most part, they do a pretty good job of retelling the story here. His introduction, him meeting Ginger, or Ginger kind of bonding with him, going out to the ice cream parlor, where eventually he is hit with the energy and becomes a Nova. We spent more time here in the hospital, but you get the drill. Like, it's retelling with updated art. And then while the origin story continues, here he wakes up. So Richard is on a ship many, many years later. He's an old man, and he has recreated or rebuilt the Nova Corp, and he's still fighting the Phalanx. And again, this is a fever dream while he's fighting off the virus. A fever dream that the Phalanx put in his mind, basically suggesting that he has no chance of winning. Because yeah, in the end, he would face the mightiest heroes of Earth, while Earth is completely destroyed, taken over by the Phalanx. All the mightiest heroes of Earth are basically Phalanx selects. But yeah, as they're going into battle, he realizes that this is not the reality. He is fighting off the virus, and the world mind is helping him fighting off that virus, and he breaks free. The virus being pushed back, and he realizes where he actually is, at his destination, where Cosmo sent him, on the planet where the Phalanx originated. That's where we get into Nova 11. We're still in the same place, so we're basically continuing from the annual into Nova 11. And he meets the creators, or the creator race of the Phalanx. Again, the Phalanx going way back. But we have Warlock from the New Mutants, who is here and raising his adopted son, trying to rebuild his species and trying to install values and moral into his son, who wants to assimilate every other being, and especially taking the life force or the life glow from living beings. And Warlock is telling Tyro, no, don't do that. We go a different way. I will not take the life glow of anyone ever again. And so they're of the race of the Technarchy, and the Phalanx broke off the Technarchy at some point. But yeah, after lots of back and forth and reviewing the history of Warlock, we get to an attack. That attack is being fought off. We have Tyro proving himself and so on. It's a pretty cool story. But the outcome of this is basically Nova having new allies, Warlock and Tyro. And again, later on, Gamora and Drax as well, because Warlock is able to take the life glow from Tyro's new host, who has enough life glow to go around. And so he's able to get rid of the virus, rid Richard Rider from the virus, rid Gamora and Drax from the virus. Here's Drax puking it out. It's interesting. Them becoming a team again. And that's when we head into the Annihilation Conquest series. The actual event here at the end, all the lead up that was necessary, because now we know who are the teams. We have within the bubble, within the Kree isolated, Kree space isolated by the Phalanx, we have Quasar, Moondragon, and Adam Warlock, who visit the High Evolutionary early on and kind of attack from that angle over here. So they team up with him, even though that alliance doesn't last long. We have on the other side, we have Wraith, Super Skrull, and Ronan. Then we have the Guardians of the Galaxy with Peter, Mantis, Groot, Rocket Raccoon, Bug, and Gabe, Captain Universe, who also won't last long. Third team here, Ronin, Super Skrull, Paxagora, and Raven. They're seeking out Ravenous to fight the Phalanx together, or better said, that is a rouse to propose an alliance. They're more interested in what lies beneath the Kree temple to get the weapons there, or the army that is stored away beneath the temple. But more about that later. One thing that I want to point out is the revelation of Ultron being behind all of this. Ultron controlling the Phalanx. In the first issue of the Annihilation Conquest series. Again, this reveal is kind of tainted a little bit, because a little bit earlier here we have, let me find those pages. I might have to skip back a little bit further. Down here in the pages of Nova 11, we have Gamora asking Drax to please let her kill Nova as a favor. She wants to take him down. And then Drax is asking her for the Phalanx, for Great Ultron. She says, no, this is personal. So that's the actual revelation here in Nova 11, that Ultron is behind the Phalanx invasion. And that big reveal here later on kind of is minimized. Or I guess back then when people read this issue by issue coming out, I'll have to look at release dates, what actually came out first. Maybe Nova 11 came out later, but I feel that revelation is being diminished a little bit, unless you have obviously guessed it previously, or in this case of the Omnibus, looked at the standard edition cover, or even if you got the direct market cover, it's right here on the board. But regardless, so it's Ultron, and who goes by the Great Ultron now, who's behind all of this. And so we're having multiple battles going on at the same time. In one of those battles, we have the High Evolutionary being a bystander here, while Ultron attacks. Ultron coming in and killing Heather, aka Moondragon. So he rips her open. Adam not being happy about it. Obviously, Quasar Phyla-Vell being completely devastated about her girlfriend being killed. And Adam Warlock at this point has enough power to fight Ultron back, at least for now. And the only way that he sees for them to get out of this is kind of destroying the entire star, launching a bomb that would shatter everything into pieces. The only way they get out is Adam Warlock kind of protecting them in this sphere. So the High Evolutionary, Adam Warlock, and Quasar being saved. We later learned that the bomb didn't help. Ultron just jumped into a different body. and was reborn. And now it fights the Guardians, who have infiltrated the tower. And then there's where the story arcs are all intertwined. You jump from one arc to another. You see how Ronan just tricks Ravenous from the Annihilus wave to a partnership just to get to his throne. Wraith is keeping the bugs under control so Ronan can go and get the army that he needs to destroy everything. So for him, the honorable death for the Kree is preferable over them living in servitude to the Phalanx. And so he wants to actually destroy his race. Again, we have the Guardians who have infiltrated Hala and have sent Groot or his spores to create a map of the tower to take it down to kind of release the Kree Empire from isolation. Their casualties. We have allies dying and Ultron coming back. And Ultron torturing Peter Quill, not giving up the information, kind of tricking the Phalanx into not infecting him with the virus. His excuses, everything would be erased, all the knowledge would be erased. Obviously, Ultron doesn't buy that, and then proceeds. But yeah, we have all those battles on multiple fronts going on. Ronan got his army. And we have the betrayal of the High Evolutionary, who got a better offer from Ultron. So he switches alliances and captures Adam. Adam now becoming the new host of Ultron. So Ultron transfers his mind into Adam Warlock's body to have the perfect symbiosis and perfect power to fight. In the meanwhile, Groot, with super growth and explosive zap, takes down the tower, and therefore the shield that had surrounded Kree space and opens it up basically for Nova to come in with his team of Drax and Gamora. That's one thing that I found being underutilized other than Wraith. Nova is being underutilized. He doesn't show up until the last issue of the miniseries, until issue 6, even though the whole omnibus is kind of centered around Nova and the Nova ongoing series. For him to come in that late, also kind of missed opportunity, but well, so be it. The other teams were holding their fair share until then. So yeah, we'll get into the last issue. We got the armies of different civilizations trying to get in. Then Nova, Warlock, Tyro, Gamora, Drax realizing that, well, the shield has come down. The World Mind says that the shield is weakened, and so that is caused by the tower burning. But so they pressure through and make it in. And Nova's taking out Ultron here. Ultron again jumping to a different body. Adam Warlock had hidden in Quasar's quantum bands and then gets to transfer back into his former self. Her quantum bands are being charged back because the barrier is down. So she can use her power again. Adam Warlock is getting his powers back. Or is getting himself back, I should say, after Ultron had hijacked his body. And so he's all himself again. We still got Ronan still wanting to destroy the place regardless. And one thing that I found being inconsistent here as well, similar to what we saw with the Supreme Intelligence earlier, is Praxagora. So Praxagora is being hijacked by Ultron. Again, Ultron jumping all around entities and bodies, attacking them, taking out Wraith. By Wraith being down for a second, Ultron now can take over the Kree army, the enhanced Kree army, to fulfill his goals. but Praxagora being a temporary host for Ultron. When Ultron jumps out of her body again, he leaves like a bump in her, or better said, Ultron overloaded her internal fusion core. It's critical, save yourselves, and then explodes. So Praxagora dies, which, let's go back to the Annihilation Omnibus, because in here, in the pages of Super Scroll number 4, we have that miniseries ending on Praxagora talking about Super Scroll, that he became a hero. So this is set in Annihilation Day plus 7,300. If my math is correct, that's exactly 20 years later. So 20 years later, Praxagora is still around, unveiling a statue of the Super Scroll. In here. Yet, here she explodes. So we'll see if she comes back later on. Again, this is not the end of the Cosmic Saga by DNA. But for now, that's a pretty big inconsistency. So how do they win in the end? Well, we have Adam Warlock channeling his powers through Quasar, and then Quasar taking out Ultron. And that's the end. Ultron's dead, or is he? He never is. But for now, the Phalanx attack has been pushed back. The machines switch off, and we are back to status quo. We see Quasar, Phylar saying goodbye to Moondragon, to Heather, and this being the end. We see Groot being cared for by Rocket Raccoon, and things being wrapped up for the most part. One thing I found weird with the Moondragon dying, though, and Drax being on the scene, is that Drax never commented on his daughter's death. I mean, I know she was a dragon in the end and had taken on that form, but I mean, Drax is hanging around, and while Quasar is saying proper farewell to her girlfriend, we have Drax just not even mentioning Heather, which is kind of weird to me. Like, I think that's a missed opportunity for him just to say something. Overall, I feel Drax has been underutilized in this as well. There's a few characters that I wish I had seen more of, especially every time Drax is featured, especially not as a select, but as himself. His sense of humor comes through, and like is still one of the best senses of humor, one of the funniest, involuntarily funniest characters in the Cosmic Saga or in Marvel as a whole. His sense of humor, his demeanor just being on point, hilarious. I love seeing more of him. And in here, I mean, for the most part, he was a select, but yeah, he's being underutilized. So is Wraith. His power, he might be the strongest being in this book, other than Ultron, maybe other than Adam or Quasar, but he is not utilized to an extent that it would make sense, especially since he has the power of like putting fear into the Phalanx. So how about amplifying that a little bit more? But again, in the end, they won. That is that. Other thoughts that I have about this before I go into extras are that I was missing Galactus. Galactus and the Heralds. There's also no Thanos, no Annihilus, even though in the Annihilation Omnibus, I'll bring that one over here again. 1 second. In the Annihilation Omnibus, we have the tease in the end, right? We have... Well, not only that we have Galactus being off and well, saying on a Galactus page it will be continued, and then we don't see Galactus or the Silver Surfer in Annihilation Conquest. But we also have Annihilus lives here, Ravenous, who has a baby Annihilus in his hands being reborn. We don't get that in Annihilation Conquest at all. So I think that's something for the future. Maybe that will be wrapped up in the pages of War of Kings. I'll look forward to that, to potentially see Annihilus and Galactus and maybe more of other characters again that were missing from Conquest. Potentially Thanos' return, who knows? Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, so forgive me if you've read all of it already and you're like kind of cracking up right now because I'm completely getting what I want. I just don't know it yet. But perhaps it's also going another direction because, yeah, let's look at the extras. Again, there is the Annihilation Saga attached in the end here, which just covers the events of the first omnibus, so the Annihilation wave moving through, so completely disconnected to this book, or the introduction to most of the characters, I should say, not disconnected, but yeah, the Annihilation Conquest Omnibus is about the Phalanx, Ultron using the Phalanx to conquer Kree space, while Annihilus started the Annihilation wave, moving through Skrull space or destroying Skrull space first before then being stopped and pushed back by multiple heroes in Kree space. So the Bucks still have half of Kree space. And at the end of Annihilation Conquest, I don't think many things have changed. A few have died, like Moondragon, and Phylar is now Quasar, and the Guardians of the Galaxy have been formed as a new team. But yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. First of all, here, the summary of the Annihilation Wave. And we have some pages from the Marvel Handbook about different characters, in case you want to read more about those, their origin and whatnot. Some sketches. And the afterword. So this is Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning with an afterword in Annihilation Conquest 6. So I guess in 2008, they wrote about the future, where it's headed from here, even though the event ended with the end, and not the end question mark, like, or to be continued like Annihilation, but Annihilation Conquest actually ended on the end down here. But here they are talking about a new Guardians of the Galaxy series spinning out of this. And that's where we are going into the road to War of Kings. And I know this will be the topic of next week's video, just as a kind of little teaser here, what we have in this omnibus, continuation of Nova, with Nova issues 13 to 22, issues 1 through 12 being collected in here, and then 13 to 22 in the Road to War of Kings. We also get the Guardians of the Galaxy 2008 1 through 12 and others, but no real event here. We have Secret Invasion, Inhumans, Silent War, X-Men Deadly Genesis, Sons of M 1 through 6. So different miniseries, but no real event. So I know this is called The Road to War of Kings, but it could probably very well be called Annihilation Conquest Aftermath or Epilogue or anything like that. Annihilation Conquest Compendium. But yeah, it's basically what I think it is. Actually, again, I don't know because I haven't read it, but I feel instead of War of Kings Prelude, it's just a bridge between Annihilation Conquest and War of Kings, whatever this is called. It continues Nova, it continues or launches the Guardians of the Galaxy, and whatever this event is, again, I haven't read it, I don't know anything about it, I don't want to even look at the cover because I don't want to have spoilers similar to Ultron being revealed here. But what it seems like is this just being a bridge between those two. And so I want to say thank you for reviewing Annihilation Conquest with me today. Definitely an event that was a ton of fun. Again, I liked the Wraith miniseries the most out of it. Overall, I liked it more than the Annihilation Omnibus, where Annihilus conquered or sent his wave through scroll space and half of Kree space and attacked the universe coming from the negative zone. In this one, we have Ultron taking over the Phalanx and setting up his isolated zone in Kree space, trying to take over the universe, I would say. So we have a pretty cool new crew in the Guardians of the Galaxy. We have Wraith, who's probably the most dope character in this one. Nova, I'm really interested to see where that goes, because where do we go from here? We go to the follow-up, the Road to War of Kings, that will collect the next few issues of Nova, 13 through 22. We have the Guardians of the Galaxy, who kick off their ongoing series, the 2008 series, collected in here with issues 1 through 12. And this omnibus apparently building a bridge between Annihilation Conquest and War of Kings over there. Which we'll review in 2 weeks before we review Road to War of Kings in 1 week. So subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified about those upcoming videos. Hit the bell for those notifications. Like this video to help increase our range. And again, this concludes episode 3 of our Cosmic Saga by DNA review. The first time me reading the Cosmic Saga by DNA. We're done with Annihilation, the 3 Annihilation books. The first one was just origin stories or classic stories before we headed into Annihilation, and now Annihilation Conquest. So we are going to head into the 3 War of Kings omnibuses next. So I hope to see you in a week from now. Thank you so much for watching. This was Literature and Pictures. Until next time. Bye.